Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy McDonald, and I have been talking to consultants and educators and people who are using technology in their practices. And one of the things we've been talking about is how they use it and talking about the specific technology platforms they use. So today I have another user story to share with you, and I have as my guest Kathryn Miller, who has been doing college counseling for many, many years. She's been a good friend of mine, and she hails from my home state, from Colorado. So Kathryn, I'm so glad to have you here today.
Hi, Cindy. It's great to see you too. I wish you were here. It's a beautiful day in Colorado.
I love it. I love it. I will be there soon. I'm going to be there the whole month of June. So I'm looking forward to that.
Well, I'm a native Californian, so turnabout.
Exactly. So Kathryn, tell us a little bit about your practice. How long have you been a consultant, and tell us a little bit about your practice in general.
Sure, Cindy. So I was in sales and marketing. I was in corporate world and had my own business. And I decided I really just loved hanging out with teenagers and learning about schools. And in 2009, I went back to school, went through the UC Irvine program, and decided that I really wanted to be an independent educational consultant. I joined HECA and started to build my practice here. I'm right outside of Denver, and largely what I do, this is world headquarters, it's just me. So Miller Educational Consulting. I take about 10, maybe 15 kids a year. My husband and I like to travel normally, so I took a few more last year, but it's a small practice. And I've been on the HECA board. We also have a local group, the College Consultants of Colorado, and I serve on our board and have done new membership for both of those. So just been doing this about 10 years plus.
Yeah. And so you've seen it evolve. You've seen things, how they've changed and how they've progressed, and how it started with very little technology availability and platforms until now we have quite a few. So College Kickstart was one of the one of the first ones that you adopted. So how did you get introduced to that?
Sure. So of course I started with your product guided path way back at the beginning when it was my CCA, and when I went to the HECA conference. I come from a large computer company, IBM, and so I was aware of technology as a tool, or a weapon in some cases, but it's definitely something I felt could enhance my practice. And I met George Fan, who's the founder of College Kickstart at a HECA conference, and we got to talking. George is also a fellow ex-IBMer, and just his product had some great answers for the whole idea of list building. And it wasn't that it generated lists, but it validated lists. And that's probably the most difficult element of what we do. I mean, apart from dealing with teenagers, of course, but really trying to find a list that is balanced for a student. So I looked at that and I felt it was just a great fit for what I needed in my practice.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's a really important point for us to, especially now, to look at, and people are asking even more questions about, well, what do we use to build a list? How do you validate that list? How do you make sure it's a balanced list? As we're coming off of the last season of college admissions, there's just so many unanswered questions, right?
So if you want, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview. I think you've got the what the homepage looks like for College Kickstart, that you could bring that up and real quick.
So we're gonna let me share my screen. So everybody should be seeing my screen.
See right on there. If you want to, when we're finished here, you can click right on a demo. It'll have a demo specifically for counselors to go into. and they'll have the pricing information and everything. But let me give you a quick overview of what it looks like from our end as counselors. And so let me share my screen back, Cindy. Okay, great. So when you put in a list for a student, you can just put a school name here, and you need a minimum of 6 schools. This is totally random, so don't think, what kind of list is she making there? So this is just a lot of different schools. And you would put in test scores if you have them. It used to be you had to have them for Kickstart, but they have adapted given the last few years. And at minimum, you need a GPA. So this is list of schools, those basic elements. You can also put in rank. You can put both SAT and ACT scores. And then we hit the magic button, run Kickstart. And the thing I love immediately is the feedback I get in the form of this grade. We're all still grade driven, right? So it says my list is slightly aggressive. So I'm not quite sure what that means. So let's take a look at that. But it immediately says, how balanced is my list? So if I go over to check the list, it's going to say I have 2 schools that are unlikely, which in many cases I call wild cards, and you probably do too.
Yep, I do.
And a few reaches, targets, and likelies. So let's take a slightly deeper look. And to me, this is the gold. It's going to show immediately that these 2 schools up here are in the most selective category. So red flag, highly unlikely to get into those schools. And that doesn't mean a student won't, because we haven't even looked at things like what the other elements to consider are, the student's background, experience, all that, and gifts. But just based from the straight academic part of it, those are the most selective. So this is the selectivity of a school, most selective to least selective, and then the relative academic performance of a student relative to the 50th percentile, top 25th, bottom 25th. The light blue are the reach schools. And then the middle blue in here are our target schools. So those are what it says, target schools where admission rates are reasonable, your academic profile is in relatively good shape. They're your sweet spot. And Kickstart recommends 3 to 5 targets in the list, and then a few likelies. So that gives me an immediate sense of, do I want to add a few more? Is my list too top heavy? Oftentimes students will come to us with a list. You can put it right into Kickstart. And if everything's up here, that's probably not going to fly. If everything's down here, maybe the student isn't being quite as assertive or aggressive on their list. Or if I see schools in here and I know that a student is looking for merit aid, potentially if they're in that top 25th percentile of a school that gives merit aid, that would give me some indicators that would be a good potential there. So if I look at what it says, a great list has 6 to 12 schools, a couple likelies, a few targets, and 2 or more reaches. So my mix is slightly aggressive because I had a few more on that. I had 4 in that unlikely and reach area. So if I want to say, I want to find some more targets, I can go in, and I've pre-entered on here, a student is interested in engineering and maybe health professions, and I want small to medium schools and maybe in an urban setting in these areas. And then there's some other requirements you can put here. So it gives me some other schools that might be ones I'd want to consider. So if we just say, let's maybe stick Case Western on there and then go back and run Kickstart, what does that do? So that basically puts Case right in that target, but it gives me another target school. It doesn't take these others off, but what might change that? So if we go back in and look at the student's profile, what if she got that ACT up a little bit? Say she got it to a 31. Would that make any difference? Let's just take a look.
Oh,
So, I got a B+. What does that mean? Well, it moved a little bit. Northeastern and BC, I could probably get that up to a 36 and it won't change. But it took and added a couple more schools, and BU still stays as a reach. But I can play around with that. So if a student wants to look at one of the things I love about this, the first thing is I love that it gives me immediate feedback with that list check. The second, it gives me a way to balance my list by adding targets, whether the ones that they suggest, or I can put some more on my own. And I can change grades and test scores to get us a sense of what if things moved, what if things changed, what if I was able to get higher scores, and would that make a difference at all? Ooh, I got an A+. What does that look like? Everything's out of the very selective, the highest, the unlikely. So I have some reaches here, but it kind of balanced it a little bit more for me. Now that may be a little tough to get. So then we go back and we say, what if I did test optional? So I'm just going to throw another school on here just so you can see something here. So if I put University of Georgia, for example, added that, ran Kickstart, I'm going to get a little notice. And let me come look at my list here. Hold on a sec. Don't know if it took. Go back to that profile. So I've got my test scores, run University of Georgia. Oh, normally it would bring up something that says that Georgia, oh, I know what I didn't do. I didn't take the test scores out. So if we delete the test score and run it, I'm going to get that notice saying the following schools in your list require SAT or ACT scores, University of Georgia. So they'll tell you if you can't go test optional on those schools. Okay.
And they keep that up to date. How often do they update that? Do you know, Kathryn?
As they have data, they get data from the schools generally in the fall. So everything will all update again in the fall. But George has a whole team of people that really keep things up to speed.
Yeah.
So, but that'll give me an idea that says, okay, I could add Georgia here. That's another target school. And it will tell me that I do need to do the testing. So some other things I love about that is then it also can give me some ideas when they have this updated. If schools have early action, it'll say, for example, Northeastern, applying early boost your admission rate from 5% to 6%. So just a little bump, but there are some schools where it might double or triple to apply early action or early decision. So it'll give you some guidelines there. We found some ways to boost. And then also, here's an action plan that you may or may want to do. Normally I recommend all my students have all their applications in by the first week of December, except for the early ones, obviously, before that. But it's just said, if you applied here and you got into one of those schools, you might not have to do regular decision for Boston College. So it gives you some ideas on how to do your applications in, say, different waves.
I like how they put it as wave 1 and wave 2. That's
so in some cases it's much more dramatic depending on when you apply. So the other thing I like is here are some really great reports that you can look at right away. So you can say your current plan, here's the admit rate, here's the category, and should I consider test optional? So it gives us an idea based on immediately what your scores are and what the school requires, when their applications due, when you get notified, and do they consider demonstrate interest? I love this because normally you have to go dig through the common data set, or this tells us right away. Some schools it's important, some it's not considered. And then right away, how can I figure out how to visit a campus? So the other view, the requirements, says what application does the school use? Is testing optional? What kind of recommendations are required? And then are interviews required? Because sometimes you have to dig through that, and this will link right to those websites also. So in many cases, they're non-evaluative or optional. And then a little bit about the essays. One more part on here is, what does the money look like? So here's a need-based overview. 99% with need were awarded aid. 87% of need met. So this gives us something what the net cost would be also for merit aid. And then it takes you right to the website for the financial aid office.
Oh, nice.
Some great different parts on that. Can you see that okay, that letter, the report?
Yes.
Okay. So I put this in here. You can actually generate a report for your student with your own logo on and the student's name. And it gives us an overview. Here are the schools we're looking at. Here's what your grade was on my grade in presenting your list. Here's how that looks from a balance point of view. And it just says here, for example, your mix is slightly aggressive. Next time we meet, let's get this list to an A- or better.
Kathryn, I'm still seeing financial aid.
Okay, so that's what I was checking to see if you could. Let me go back into share. Okay, can you see that now?
There we go. Yes.
So here's that report, and it will give us all that same information that's in the packet. There are
nice.
9 pages here. So if you wanted to give a deliverable to your client, you could. It can be customized for your logo, and then just says, here are the schools we're looking at based on your profile. Here are the different categories that those schools fell into. Next time we meet, let's get this list to an A- or better. Here are the things we want to do. Let's talk about early. And then it goes down to all those individual reports that we just were looking at. So you can hand this to a student and say, here's what you need to know about, let's look at putting an interview on your schedule. So really, really some helpful things, which I love as well. The only thing, couple other little goodies about, can you see Kickstart now?
I'm still seeing your college plan.
Okay, let me jump back out of here again. There we go. So just a couple little things you ask, are there any things you wish they would change? When you have a student's report done, you can actually give control of Kickstart over to the student. So you can add, change at school, look at these details. And I used to not do that, but now I give it to all my students. The only thing is, once you've done that, you don't have control to save schools. Only the student can save, delete and save the list. So that's one thing I've suggested to them. And just a tiny little thing, you have to kind of dig over here for the word categorize. So to me, there should be a big button that says categorize, and they're working on both of those things. The other thing I will just point out there, if you're not aware, George Fan does put out these wonderful blogs, and he has admission results. So here it'll show here what the admit rates are, and he keeps that very up to date. You don't have to subscribe to Kickstart to do that. You can just subscribe to his blog. But I give that link to schools, to students, to just get an idea of what things look like and what the admission cycle was like as well. So those are the main things I'd have to say. Cindy, so any questions or thoughts about that?
I think that, so let's talk about how you use this. Why is this important to your families? Why do you use this particular one? And talk about the cost, because there is a cost to this.
There is, and I don't know off the top of my head, because it varies, and adapter and all sorts of things. I think they generally say it's about the cost per student of an average 1 hour of a consultant's time. So if you look at it that way, that's probably, to me, that's very affordable.
Yep.
And to me, it is absolutely worth it. I buy it for all my clients, and some students, they're like, I don't really need to have access to it, but I show them how to use it. And what I love is when I am starting to put schools on their list, I can immediately say, oh, I need to add a few more in the target zone, or I've got way too many up here. So it gives me that grade back and, feedback immediately that my list is not balanced. And then I take all these and I load them right into a guided path.
Mm-hmm.
So, and put the schools in and say, okay, here are the schools you're going to be researching. And in these ones are the reaches, these are your likelies. And it just immediately ties it all together. So a student can get a sense. And if I could just get over a 30 on my ACT, if I'm applying to a school that is requiring testing, or maybe I don't apply test optional to all my schools. So there are just a lot of little nuggets in here. I should also point out, you can override, if for example, your student in-state or at a particular school you can override that likely or reach. And you can put, if this student would be a definite for that school, then you can change any of these on here. It gives you a chance to do that as well.
Oh, that's nice, because then that gives you that opportunity to customize it and tweak it a little bit. So would you say, Kathryn, that this saves you a lot of time?
I think it saves me a lot of time, because I feel like now that I'm comfortable with it, I've gotten so, and like many of you have been doing this long enough, I will just be talking to a student as we're going through everything, and here's their criteria for college. And I will put together a list, boom, boom, boom. And then I immediately load it in there. And if I get a C, I'm like, what was I thinking? But my average has been an A+ for a long time. So, so I will just, here's a list of schools that, I know, and oh boy, I do have, maybe I should be a little more aggressive, or maybe I was too aggressive and I need to back off. So the immediate feedback for me is great. And I find it invaluable. I've done other presentations for them, and I had a colleague over here a week ago. I was showing her College Kickstart. I don't think there's anything quite like it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So to me, and you can use the output and put in your other platform that you use,
Mm-hmm.
like a guided path or whatever. So,
yeah, or Council More, or whatever it is.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. So, and it does, if you want to have a printout, something a printout, you can do that as well, or give them a PDF. But generally, just giving the student the chance to say, oh, maybe I'll add a few more schools here or there has been great.
Well, and it gives you that validation. It shows, demonstrates your professionalism. You have a professional tool, and you have something that backs up the message and what recommendations you're making for a list. And it gives you an opportunity to validate that before you present it to the student, so you make those adjustments if you need to.
Yeah, because you can know, we can get a sense, of course, in tools like a guide path. There are the graphs in there. This is just another way. George's algorithms just validated slightly differently, and you can do them, without the test scores, and it gives a good sense of what that looks like too. So I've just found it to be a really key part of what I do when I'm building my lists.
That's fabulous. And I love how AI has become a part of our profession, that George has introduced that, and it's become it demonstrates how valuable and what a complementary tool it can be to our work. And anything that saves you time and is affordable and can validate what we do will, and I agree, if you look at it from, this is an hour worth of my time, you never get that time back. And just look at those reports and things you've done. To do it on your own manually, by going to all these websites or college data, that you could do it, but it would take you tons of time. And I just don't see the sense in doing that.
Well, and I know that George has a team that is really checking the data, because sometimes on some of those other websites, you look and the data is a couple of years old.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
He's putting really current information in there, and just stays on the cutting edge of what's going on. And plus he knows what's out there. So this isn't just for data wonks. This is, I think it's very accessible and user friendly for anybody.
That's good. And that's a good point too. I think that's, and having come from the technology, I know from our experience that keeping data up is the biggest challenge you have. And finding sources for that is always a continuing challenge. And that's why we never used the iPad's data from College Navigator, because sometimes it's 2 or 3 years old. And admissions data or financial aid data that's that old is worthless. And so you have to have data that's current. And yes, they definitely do an excellent job. So Kathryn, thank you so much. This has just been so enlightening. And anything else you want to add or, point out from?
I just encourage colleagues out there to just give these things a try. And, I learned working for a huge computer company that these are all tools. A pencil's a tool, something else is a tool, the computer is a tool. And if you just maybe get outside your comfort zone a little bit and use some of these tools, it can just make your job a lot easier.
Yeah. And so I'm going to share, let me come back and share to just remind everybody, you can go to the College Kickstart website or not, what happened to it?
Down somewhere.
I know, it's like, it says it's there, but it's not coming up. Let me pull this up. Okay. And we will do this, College Kickstart. And you can come here and you can, it gives you the login demos and the password demo, so you can go straight in and explore and see for yourself all the things that Kathryn has shared. And you also can contact them and ask them for your own demonstration, your own, ask your own questions. Here's where you create an account to be a part of the monthly newsletter. I agree. My partner, Joanne, whom who is also an I was going to say FBI person, but IBM person. She's been a subscriber of this monthly newsletter from the very beginning. Right. So thank you very much. And I appreciate your being able to share it. It's been very informative.